Hey gang, Uncle Todd and Sonny here, and we're going to look at the first episode of Netflix's Fall of the House of Usher, based on the works of Edgar Allan Poe. And I do loves me some Poe, especially the Vincent Price movies. But that's not this. This is set in the modern day, and there's a lot of Easter eggs for Poe fans. Especially this first episode in a lot of the names of the characters. The episode opens at a funeral where Rodrick Usher is burying the last of his 6 children that have died within the last 2 weeks. And he sees a familiar figure up in the balcony atrium area, a woman, but then she disappears. Later that night, he calls C. Auguste Dupin, who is a federal prosecutor with the Justice Department, who is leading the trial against Rodrick and his family's business, Fortunato, a drug company, and they're being sued for willful negligence in putting out products that they know were addictive. Basically, it ties into the opioid epidemic we've suffered through. And he calls him to come visit him at his childhood home. Not his mansion, but this old, rundown house. And he says he wants to make a confession. So, Dupin brings out a recorder, and Rodrick starts by talking about his childhood with his mother and his sister Madeline. And there is an implication that their father was actually this rich businessman who their mother did business with. When they're teenagers, their mother gets very sick, and she won't get a doctor. She's become a religious zealot. And they go to talk to the rich man, and he throws them off his property. He will not help them convince her to get a doctor. And then that night, she dies. And what do? Well, they call some doctor. Then the police will come, they'll have questions, and they'll want to embalm her. And they know her mother did not want to be embalmed. She wanted to go into the ground intact. So they bury her in the backyard. Yeah. Later that night, it turns out she wasn't dead. She was in a cataleptic state. And she digs her way out of the shallow grave they put her in, and she's snapped. She attacks the children, then stops, goes to the house of the rich man who is their father. I mean, they almost come right out and say it, and kills him. We then cut to the trial, which happened 2 weeks before all of his children died in weird and bizarre ways. They keep mentioning that. And at the opening statements of the trial, Dupin lets slip that he has an informant inside the family. Now, he's not supposed to do that. That is something that was supposed to come out later in trial because, the informant is in fear of their life, that kind of thing. And really, he said it just to put all of the ushers on edge. It's probably true because, although it's stricken from the record, he told it to the judge, so there probably is a witness coming through. So, Rodrick and Madeline call all the family, children and spouses and grandchildren. Madeline's not married. Usher's on like his 5th wife. And So all of his kids have different mothers. But and he has a new wife, Juno, who no one in the family likes, except Rodrick. Anyway, during the dinner, Madeline has their attorney, Arthur Pym, hand out a set of agreements that they all need to sign, spouses and children, or blood children and their spouses. And basically it says if any of them talk to the government, they will be disinherited. And it's a retroactive thing. If at any time they had, they'll be disinherited. And this family's loaded. So, after some dickering, they all sign. And then Rodrick stands up and says he is offering $50 million, tax-free, cash, to whoever can find out who the informant is. Well, he's just set them up for a huge fighting amongst the family, because they're all going to try and prove each other is the informant, or whoever the informant is. And then we cut back to the funeral at the beginning of the episode, and Rodrick comes out and he sees a raven. How odd. Just one raven hanging out at the church. And when he goes to get into his limo, he sees an apparition and appears to have a stroke. His nose starts bleeding and then he collapses. And it ends with him just staring up at the raven. Oh, one more thing. During one of the flashbacks to the 80s, Rodrick and Madeline, who are in business together, well, they run the family company. New Year's, they've done something, because they're very nervous and are trying to be seen so that there are witnesses to where they were. And they meet the bartender, Verna, who says some very interesting and cryptic things to them. And this is also the woman he keeps seeing. At one point, before the family get together, he sees her pop up in the bar in his home while he's drinking, and she says a phrase that you'll hear again in the flashback to the bar. So, very good first episode, very intriguing. They haven't gotten to the actual deaths yet, which they keep talking about being bizarre and probably be pretty grisly since this is a cable show. And pretty good cast. As Arthur Pym, you've got Mark Hamill, and he plays a nasty little piece of work. You know, the scummy kind of lawyer that just you hate having to deal with, because he's always got more claws than you can figure out. We have Bruce Greenwood as Rodrick Usher. This is an interesting character for him because he bounced back and forth between playing bad guys in some films and good guys in others. Probably most notably as Captain Pike in the one Star Trek film trilogy. Where was it? I think Chris Pine. Yeah, Chris Pine played Captain Kirk in that. And Zachary Levi played Spock. And we also have Mary McDonnell as Madeline. She, of course, she was on the show. It was Closer, and then it became Major Crime. Sorry. And my nose just keeps itching. Every time I turn the mic on, my nose starts to itch. Anyways, and she was, of course, in Dances with Wolves. And first Independence Day movie. And playing Verna, our spectral figure, is, of course, Carla Gugino. And boy, she's come a long way from doing Pauly Shore movies. Of course, she also did the title character in the Karen Cisco series that was an adaptation of one of Elmore Leonard's characters. And she was in... she and Greenwood were both in Gerald's Game adaptation of the Stephen King novel. And she was in the first Sin City. So yeah, good cast there. The only thing I'm not liking about this, at least for now, is the characterization of Dupin. Because in the Poe books, he was basically the first detective. I mean, he was the first private detective in fiction, the first genius detective. He is basically where Sherlock Holmes came from. He was one of the inspirations. He was a genius detective. If you've ever read The Purloined Letter or Murders in the Rue Morgue. So he was in a third one. The Mystery of Mary Roget, I think was it. That's the title. And he basically solved cases without leaving his apartment. He just gathered all the facts to him, kind of like Nero Wolfe. He'd just have all the facts gathered to him, and then he would figure it out. Although in the Purloined Letter, he did leave to get the letter. That's the story that where we get the whole thing about hiding something in plain sight, because that was the twist in that mystery. But the guy here, he doesn't really seem that bright. Maybe I'm just expecting too much. I mean, I'm sure as the program goes on, we'll see more of him, but I don't know. It's just not what I was expecting for Dupin. I was thinking something more along the lines of George C. Scott in the TV film of Murder in the Rue Morgue. But have to wait and see what the next episode holds. Please hit like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.